Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, CesarRespino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Today, I have a special guest. His name's Azaan Subhani. Hey, Azaan, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to have you here today. Before we get started, let me give our listeners and viewers a little bit of your background, and then we can kind of dive in. Azaan, he is the CEO of Marlin Strafe, a management recruiting consulting agency, and the Managing Director of Buckhead.Ventures. He was raised in Atlanta and spent most of his life bouncing anywhere from College Park to Buckhead. Before starting his entrepreneurial journey, he was a medical school student, and then he left that life far behind to follow his passion. So I'm always intrigued on learning that, because I think I like the idea of, or when people kind of go through a particular aspect in life or try to carry on themselves in a particular path, and then they switch that around because they have a different passion or they have a different calling. So that's always very interesting to know how that all develops. Before we get that though, talk about, so you were born in Atlanta or raised in Atlanta. Where are you originally from, and how was your upbringing like?
Absolutely. So I was born in Florida, actually, in Orlando, about 5 minutes from Disney World. So I spent a lot of my childhood there.
Yeah.
But my family quickly moved to Atlanta, and I've spent most of my time here. I lived in Pennsylvania as well, in Hershey. But, I'm a first-generation immigrant. My parents are from Pakistan here.
Okay.
So, moving to the United States is very tough for anybody.
Right.
Especially you don't know the language, all these things. They've been here for a while, so it's all good on this sense. But it's very hard to find your identity, right? Because you don't know, am I Pakistani? Am I American? I always try to lead more American in a sense of saying, this is my country, this is where I'm from. But, I've been here in Atlanta since I was about 3 years old. I'm 22 today. So a long time. And this is really like, Atlanta's my home place. It's truly my city in a sense. There is so much culture, diversity, and beautiful things that come from here. And honestly, I owe my whole career and everything I've done to this place. All my friends, my family, everyone's got me this far is because of Atlanta, realistically.
Nice. Let's dive in more into the idea of identity. And then you mentioned that, and I think that's so critical. And then also the fact that you're first generation in this country. I want to talk more and learn more about how was that. I mean, obviously, you find your identity. Are you Pakistani and you're American? Like, diving more into it, because I think there's a lot of people that definitely go through. I mean, I do believe that this country has been built upon, thousands of people that have migrated here from generation after generation, right? And so I think it's very interesting to know that when you are, born here, yet your parents are from a different country, that by itself can bring some challenges, perhaps, upbringing with the idea of, again, who am I? What's my identity? And then also try to get accustomed to the culture of your parents, from different country, right? Whereas here, really, you're trying to fit in or find a different culture. So try to get all of that. So tell me more about that, because I think that's very intriguing.
Absolutely. And the reason why I even was a medical school student was because that whole identity thing. Especially in our culture, right? It's like you're either a doctor or like an engineer. There's no really in between. And it's like the ultimate thing. And it makes sense because like when you first come to America, what is the most probably respected and easy, not easy, it's the right word, but the respected profession, and it's an easy way to turn your life around immediately. It's a guaranteed success route. So it's very traditional. And that's kind of why I went to medical school, because I grew up my entire life thinking I was going to be a doctor because my parents told me to. Of course, they support me now and stuff, but, it was a tough journey. And it was I think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type of vibe
Hmm.
in that
Hmm.
sense. But growing up, especially being in the South, when times, kind of post 9/11 world, racism's a little, it's slowly coming up. It's not like nowadays, I think we are very controlled about it. There's still
Hmm.
instances here and there where it's bad,
Yeah.
but as a general population, I think people are very accepting nowadays, and people are very open to different cultures.
Right.
But back then, it wasn't like that. It was, you get a lot of comments in elementary school, and you didn't even know yourself. It was the hardest part. You're like, am I Pakistani? Am I American? But the most important part is that the beautiful thing about America is that you could be anyone you
Mhm.
want to. You can come
Right.
here wherever you were before, and then the minute you land here, you're a whole new person. And that's the most beautiful thing about it. I believe this country was built on immigrants.
Right.
And, if you look at the workforce today, look how diverse it is. And look how, America is the number one GDP in the whole world. And all the, corporations that come from here, all the business, even the culture comes from America. And
Right.
that culture isn't just like, a few guys from 1800, right? That culture is all the world's culture put into one, the best of everything.
Yeah.
So in the identity sense, I think that everybody will struggle with that at some point, especially if your parents are not the traditional kind of white American for a long time. But
Hmm.
it's also a coming of age, it's a coming of age story of determining who you are in America. What is your life going to be? And that's, I think, really beautiful. Because I feel in other countries, like in Pakistan, when I went to go visit recently, um, people aren't given that opportunity. People live very, very straight edge lives where there's not much variation or dynamic. And you are pretty much from birth, you have almost a plan laid out for you. There's not much you can do. At least here, we have the opportunity to fail, to succeed, to kind of go back and forth and see who we are. So hopefully that answers your question about identity.
It definitely does. It definitely does. And then, growing up, were your parents teaching you English, or you learning Pakistani? What was the, or what was your,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I learned English, of course, and I think English is always going to be my number one language. I
Hmm.
know Urdu, and that's like the language they speak. I
Hmm.
grew up to learn Arabic as well.
Oh,
Kind of lost it a little bit here.
yeah.
So, but Urdu, I'm very weak on speaking it, truly, to be honest, because we just never really spoke it at home. My parents always really spoke English to kind of get us speaking English as much as possible, and they speak great English now too, of course.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can fully understand it. I just can't speak it back is the problem. So
Yeah.
when we went to Pakistan, I would just be quiet. I just listen, take it in, and then I
Yeah.
would hope they spoke English and I return an English answer. I
Yeah.
really just wasn't confident. And then one thing about that is when I went to Pakistan, I felt what my dad felt when he first came here, not being able to speak English,
Mhm.
right? That kind of
Yeah.
language barrier. And that's something I've never experienced in my life until going there,
Yeah.
where you're like, wow, communication, like you don't realize how important that is. And that small thing, just even being a little unconfident of saying the right word, getting the right
Right.
message across, that's such a crucial thing. And I really, really did not have an understanding for that until I went out there.
Yeah.
I have a lot of empathy now for people that, are learning English or, struggle in some of their native language. I
Yeah.
totally get it. It makes sense to me now. I never
Right.
understood before.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's good. You said something that I think is definitely notable, and we need to recognize that. And you mentioned, just even being here, and being first generation, and just the fact that we're in this country that has opportunities, right? And sometimes, as you mentioned, when you went back home, you see like, wow, it's not the same. They don't have the same opportunities, or they don't have that life full of possible uh, opportunities in terms of succeeding in life, right? Because they're already kind of have this game plan, and even though they don't want to, they're growing to the society where the society is probably dictating how you're going to live the rest of your life. And sometimes we might take that for granted here, right? Even the people that are
Absolutely. Yeah.
natives from here, or people that are born from here. And so what might be your message to that, being from a different, having a different background with your parents being from a different country, to the people that are here that may not be taking the opportunity, the freedom to be able to do something about their lives, and more or less probably, it might not sound correct, yet complaining about, I don't have this, I don't have that, I'm struggling, government's not helping me, whatever the case may be, right? Because I do believe that we are in one of the best countries, except I see it time and time again that people take that for granted.
Absolutely. And one thing I always say is that so when my parents told me to become a doctor, the reason for it, once I say it again, is like the stability aspect of it. But for this kind of most message going on any first generation American, like your parents did so much to get here, right? They put in so much effort. They built that foundation for you. So I think it's your responsibility to take that risk, take every opportunity you can, because they've done so much. No point of just playing it safe, because I think, at least in their mentality, playing it safe is the only way to do it. You go out there, everyone's playing it safe. There's not very many risk takers. This is a country of risk takers. So you've been given this opportunity. Don't squander it, right? Do whatever you can. And here's the thing, like, even if you fail, you can always try again, right? You can fail, you can fail, you can fail. Um, it's just you can't give up. There's so many different facets to be successful in America, and success comes in many forms too. It's not just money, right? It can be family, it can be happiness, and the best thing is that you can find it any way you want here. The only thing there's a short of is time, right? That's what I'd say.
Yeah,
We're not here for that long, so
right.
don't waste it. Spend every minute doing something that you're passionate about, or doing something that makes sense to you. My whole medical career, in a sense, I wasn't passionate about it. I did it because that's what I thought was the right thing to do.
Right.
And at the time, it might have been, but I'm really passionate about what I do now. And I think what I do now is, like, I'm significantly happier in a sense. I
Yeah.
wake up every day, and when I do my work, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm achieving a goal.
Yeah.
So, like, that's what you need to go for. Take that risk, make that kind of leap, and don't ever give up. Another huge thing also, and this is a very cultural thing. Expect people to be naysayers all the time. That's just,
Mm.
it's never going to end. Even your family, even the people back home, whoever it's going to be, right? It's just how it is.
Right.
It's a whole new world over here, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to see succeed. It's unfortunately the real truth. Um, but you got to just drown it out, right? You got to focus on you, and when you can do that, focus on your happiness, what makes you passionate, then you'll see yourself skyrocket.
Yeah.
It's very simple. That solution.
Yeah, and I think sometimes even your own family, although they may not say it directly, they don't really want you to succeed, or they don't want you to get to that next level in your life. And sometimes it
Absolutely. Yeah.
becomes
And
important.
you got to remember that even your parents, right? They want what's best for you, of course,
Right.
but sometimes they don't know what's best for you.
Right.
But they go on what they think's best for you. The only person who knows what's best for you is yourself, no one else.
Yeah.
And it's hard for especially immigrant families to understand that, because it's a very family system. It's
Yeah.
very hard to take, the word of the father, who's supposed to be like the dominant of the household, and be like, no, I'm not doing it.
Right.
Almost borderline impossible. And that's something I struggled with a long time. So
Right. Well, and it also comes down to, I believe, with the idea of full. It comes down to respect, right? Respecting your parents, and what they say or feel like you should be doing. And it's like, well, if I don't do this, am I disrespecting my parents by not following through or not doing the things that they're doing? And I know, at least for me, I'm from Mexico, so I know at least the same thing, right? That culture is like, you always kind of got to follow what your parents need you to do, and if you don't follow through, then you feel like I might be disrespectful, and I kind of feel forced, like maybe I got to do this until you finally find your identity. Because again, this country is built upon, as you mentioned, immigrants and entrepreneurs to an extent. I do believe that, and
absolutely.
also the freedom of saying, what, I got to be able to venture and do what's best for me. Except other countries, that's not the case. Normally, as you mentioned, there's already that path laid out for you, and deviating from that can seem like I'm being disrespectful to my culture, my family, my whatever that might be, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of funny is that the whole thing about disrespect here, I'll tell you a funny story. I think I was at a friend's house maybe
Yeah.
15 years ago, something like that. His mom brings out chicken nuggets that they're not really great. It's like, screw you, mom, something like that. I was like, wow, you talk to your parents like that? I was like, it'd be over for me. I could never
Yeah.
do that.
Oh yeah.
Even today, I could never. It's like, it's so different. Like, I can't imagine doing that.
Right.
I want to say that it gives them kind of a stability point where the family, the traditional, I think, American family, if they do stuff like that, it lets the kind of son fight with the upper, like the dad, a little more. Let them
Hmm.
do a little more what they want. It's a
Yeah.
good thing and a bad thing. I
Right.
wish that we had a little more ability to
Yeah.
fight back and do what we want.
Yeah.
But that doesn't come till you're like older in our
Yeah.
cultures.
Right. Right.
But at a very young age, it was very shocking to see. I was not used to it. And I think there was even I think Dave Chappelle talked about something about that too, at a comedy skit, saying stuff like, you know, the culture is just so different. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, all right. So obviously, you've mentioned you got into medical just to kind of follow, that path that really more your parents wanted to for you to do. How long were you in medical school and kind of in that journey, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I went to undergrad for a little bit here, and then, I went directly into this like very expedited program. It was
Mhm.
supposed to be a much, much faster route. So in total, maybe, I really didn't spend that much time in medical school, but I spent a lot of time preparing for it. I even before going to medical school, I was so into it. I was getting the textbooks at home and doing the flashcards for the board exams before I was even enrolled in medical school, which was crazy. But this was back. This is all pretty recent too. This is not very, very. I think I left. I want to say in like 2020, right? I remember COVID being like it might have been 2019, right? I remember COVID really just starting out there.
Mhm.
Um, and that was like the big thing. And I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this.
Mhm.
Um, I think I'm about 3 years into my entrepreneurship journey right now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been a while since I've really touched that.
Right.
One thing I will say that I think it did help in some sense. It did teach me discipline. It taught me that you really have to sacrifice for what you want.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that, sorry, my cats are like running up and down somewhere over here.
Yeah.
But one thing I feel like it really puts you in a box, especially like modern day education, like universities and stuff like that. They don't teach you to be a free thinker. They don't teach you to go above and beyond. They
Right.
teach you to follow the lines, stay in your lane, and don't question anything.
Yeah.
I think a big problem also is, kind of professors nowadays they're not able to go above and beyond because of so many regulations, and the kind of professions change what it used to be. I think
Yeah.
back in the day, people used to really respect professors, not anymore. And
Mhm.
you got to think like, who's to blame for that? Is it students or is it teachers? I think it's administration is the
Yeah. The
problem.
system
I
for
think
sure. Yeah.
education becomes such a business nowadays. And this, I'm
Yeah.
a businessman too, right? I get it. I understand. You need to make money, but like they're taking really the core of the education system out and replacing it with a money grabbing system. So
Yeah.
I'm very like, where I am today. And the reason why I even started Buckhead.Ventures, or Buckhead.Ventures, however you want to say it, that's
Mhm.
the domain Buckhead.Ventures. So I was
Mhm.
like, let's just call it Buckhead.Ventures.
Yeah.
Um, it is because, when I was in college and it was here in Atlanta, the school I went to consistently failed business students, right? They did not give them the skills they needed to succeed in the real world. And student entrepreneurs don't even get me started on that. They hated them. They were just so unpassionate about them. They honestly looked down on them. So I started that company because I wanted to give these people the same opportunity that kind of I had through my experience, my short business experience.
Mhm.
But the goal was kind of link them up with these financing partners, these consulting partners, technology consultants that my school just never taught them about. The school would teach you about like what they called business management, but that's not real business. Business can't be taught in that sense. You need that real world experience. You need those connections. You need that ability to talk to someone in the field and really just incorporate this information.
Yeah.
And then, I want to tell you, I was consistently disappointed and failed by my school's business like system that I was like, I have to do something. And it's worked out pretty well. I think we've been able to really, really help a lot of entrepreneurs here in Atlanta and give them enough, like at least a jumping off point to take their business to the next level. A lot more than the university ever did.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think, as you mentioned, I think, again, education, just like anything else, is a big corporation, it's a big company, it's a big business, right? And I feel like they're really in this idea, and this goes back to, I'm sure, many many years, right? Even during the Great Depression and all those different moments where you wanted to create what I would call now good soldiers, so they can go out into the workforce, get a good job, and then just kind of follow that trend, right? And maybe that worked then, except now we're in a different era where, as you mentioned, even with COVID, with things that just happened with COVID, when people realize that, hey, I can actually work from home and I can create something just out of my
absolutely. Yeah.
my office or my room or whatever at my house, and I can create a living of doing that. That's not what the college is teaching you, right? They're teaching you to become a good soldier, so you can go find a job and work for a company, in their company. Even from a financial perspective, when you go to business school and you're learning about um, you know uh, uh, P&Ls, things like that, is very minimal. Like they're not giving you enough for you can
Right.
for
Yeah.
you to do that, right? And so I do feel that the school, I'm not knocking it out. Obviously, I have an MBA too, and I'm not knocking any of that. I do believe that it should be a little bit different, and I do also
Mhm.
believe that everybody has a different idea of what they want in their life. So if you want to be, working for a 9 to 5, by all means, go ahead and do that. I also do believe, being in this side of the spectrum, as an entrepreneur, I do believe that um, the traditional school, is not exactly what maybe we need, just because it doesn't give you the tools and the necessary aspects for you to start your own business and start, learn about money. What is money? What is the velocity of money? How do you do all these different things? How do you run a business? How do you hire people? How do you, all these different things? It doesn't really give you all
Absolutely.
of that, right? And so I do believe that. So obviously you kind of found this through pandemic, and it's like, I don't want to do this, you right out of COVID, and you decided to do your company. You touched a little bit about that. Um, uh, First is the idea of you wanted to create something different, or be able to give more value out. Obviously, it seems like it. Um, Besides that, what was that other driving factor to say, what, I'm going to venture out and do this on my own, become an entrepreneur, because that's a very risky move, and a lot of people are so afraid of doing that because of the unknown, because of, I don't have the elements, the connections. There can be thousands of excuses. Yet, what was your reason to say, what? Yeah, I'm gonna take this risk. I'm gonna take this leap of faith, and I'm gonna go again against all odds, my family, and become an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. This is it's a two-stage question. I'll start with this
Yeah.
one. So when I came back from medical school, I re-enrolled in college, and I against my parents' wishes, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do business. I've always wanted to do it. I've always wanted to. My thing initially was finance. I wanted to go on Wall Street. I want to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came back, I was like, okay, I got to start. I got to really hit the ground running. I'm really behind. I got to just get back. Everyone's way ahead of me. And I wasn't really that behind, but it's another thing about imposter syndrome. I think that that was one thing I've suffered with my whole life about not being enough, right? Not being the one. So I was like, oh my God, I'm so behind. I'm like, it's over, right? I'm a failure. So that was the first driving factor. I was like, I have to do something that'll get me to catch up. I have to do something that'll get me back in the good graces of the parents, something that I don't feel myself as a failure anymore. And I feel like something that can be respected. The second thing is that I actually tried to interview for an internship at a bank. I'm not gonna say which bank, but it was one here in Atlanta. They're well known to be not very nice people.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the top banks too. I
Mm-hmm.
remember I did the interview, and one guy's on his cell phone the whole time. He's talking to. I was like, this is crazy, right? And the other guy, he's like roasting me with questions. At the end, he's like, yeah, we don't think you're material for here. And I was like, wow, that is the worst experience I've had in a long time. I was like,
Right.
I know I'm a failure, but I didn't know I'm that bad.
Yeah.
Right. I think you could at least give me a little respect in this interview. So I left and I was like, you know what? I could do that. These guys aren't nothing. I bet I could beat them. And that's kind of how we got into this whole entrepreneurship journey. It was a combination of losing and then kind of being belittled. And I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is not what it's all about. There's so much more out there. And then I will say some of the discipline from medical school, I think that was really a driving factor. But when I really first started, every pain, every little bit of anxiety kind of melted away in a sense. When I was working on my company, I felt like I was doing something important for once.
Mm-hmm.
In medical school, they make you feel like you're doing something important, but really, if you don't love it, it's not going to feel important to you. You're going to feel like you're just reading a textbook. This is the first time, and I've never been a textbook guy. I'm telling you, like school, it never resonated with me. I always thought it was crazy. I always thought that like the whole idea of it, even like taking exams, and I didn't get bad grades by any means, but like I just hated it. It was never me. This is the first time in my life where I felt like I truly, truly am doing something special. There were the exams were exams I was giving myself in a sense, right? I was the bearer of my grades. And that's something I loved. I loved having that self-direction. I love that ability to be able to go out and do what I need to do. And I think the most important part, and especially a lot of entrepreneurs feel the same thing, is that when you see your impact in the world, more than the money, more than anything else, if you can look around and say, I did this, I did that, I did this, that's the best feeling in the world. Because that's not granted to a lot of people. I think the most important thing is like the influence you make on the world around you.
Right.
Um, but yeah, hopefully that answers that question. And I know
Yeah.
I keep jumping on tangents here for everything
No,
about
no,
that.
no, no. You're good. No, and that definitely makes sense. I mean, again, kind of going back to that we just mentioned is, I think that the impact you're doing sometimes is definitely way bigger too, right? So having that being able to have that impact. So how old were you when you started your entrepreneurial journey?
I was, I would say 19,
19.
roughly. Yeah.
So yeah, so you're 22 now, 19.
I know I look
What's
40. I don't know if you see my like this hairline here was like I think it was here 2 years.
Hey, that's part of becoming an entrepreneur, right? Is that is going through all of that, but I'm sure you wouldn't have it differently. Um, so with that, what would be your advice? Because obviously there's a lot of people that might be, in their early 20s, or even people that are maybe in their late 40s and say, hey, man, I want to jump on this and take this leap of faith. And obviously it might be different between a 20-year-old versus a 40 or 50-year-old, just because from a financial perspective. Yet I don't think that there's never going to be a bad time, or obviously if you can do it sooner better. But even those that are a little bit older in age, you can still make it happen, right? So again, being able to jump on this, if you want to do this, what will be your advice for anyone that wants to jump on, trying something, taking that leap, becoming an entrepreneur in any area that they have interest?
Absolutely. So let me start with a little two things here about that. Age is definitely, as much as you want to think is a factor, it's a pretty big factor in entrepreneurship because at the stage when you're in 20s, right? And like I know when I first started, I was the most immature person on the planet. This thing grows you a lot because you got to think that this becomes your life. You do not have time for anything else. And if you really are passionate about it, like you're gonna love it too.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's nothing besides this. When I first started in the world of entrepreneurship, I really didn't believe in work-life balance. I thought it was like a concept. I was not privileged to have. All business owners know that statement is not that far from the truth. That
Mm-hmm.
first initial ramp up phase requires your life to be your work. And my life was practically my work, and my work was my life. My
Mm-hmm.
dad always had this crazy saying that he would tell everyone that's like his profession, it was his obsession. And I think that fits for me. My profession is my obsession. But starting at a really young age, here's the thing: when you start your own business, go in the world of entrepreneurship, you're going to gain experience that nobody your age is going to have. Nobody your age until they're maybe 50 is going to have that same level of knowledge you're going to have. The hard part is transferring that into like if you were to get a job afterwards, transferring into like an actual skill that they're willing to see. However, when you'll walk out, you'll go two ways, right? You'll either fail and start again, or you'll get successful, or you'll go to a job or something. But you will learn so much in that short amount of time that you will be like, nothing else can beat it. I promise you can go to 10 years of college. It won't beat 1 year of entrepreneurship. You're going to learn so much. When you're a little bit older, of course, I can't really speak for everyone because I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But I can assume it's a very scary thing, especially you're coming from like good income, right? If you're making a nice salary, you're doing great. You have bills, you have wife and kids, maybe two cats. I have two cats. So
Yeah.
like, they're still running, by the way. So I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, like, it's very hard to make that leap, and it was even very hard for me to make that leap as well. Um, but the most important thing is that you got to remember that there's no one to answer to besides yourself. So it's up to you what you want to do. Of course, there's macroeconomic factors and things like that, but making that leap is probably the best decision you're going to make. And here's the thing: if it fails, at least you have 40 years experience that you can kind of rely back on. And they're in a much better position than I was. I'll be completely honest. Like,
Right.
I had no experience. I had no skills. I had nothing. I was a failure. That's what I was.
Yeah.
So, if I can do it, I'm sure you guys can do
That
it too.
definitely someone can do it. Yeah. I like what you mentioned here. And you said that entrepreneurship is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Work-life balance is crucial for your journey, right?
Absolutely. Something like, business is like putting on a play, I'll say. It's crucial to wake up in the morning, put on that businessman costume and mask, coordinate the sets, write the lines, pack the house, and give the audience a 5-star show day after day. It really, I mean, it's like, you got to think of it in that sense. It's super draining, but you got to be able to recharge the batteries and not get burnt out to consistently put on a best show day after day after day, because it's like, it's like I wrote that. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And especially when you're doing like cash flows and stuff like that. And I'm in the world of VC where cash flows is everything. Cash is king. So you need to be able to last, right? We talk about burn rates in my business a lot. How fast is a company burning through their cash to make a product happen? You got to survive those 60 years or 50 years in the entrepreneurship game. And they say that what is it? 70% of businesses fail in the first year, first
Yeah.
3 years
Right. Right.
or
Yep.
something.
Yep.
I'm not sure. You have an MBA. I'm sure they taught it in your
Yeah.
classes,
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
one.
Definitely. No,
But
it's those, yeah, those numbers, run those numbers. Yep.
so the thing is, like, you got to survive that. It's tough, and if you can survive those first 3 years, you're good, right? You're set. And you'll have so much skills in those first 3 years, you're good to go. And it's easy to make a lot of money very fast. It's not like people. I think especially you see it in COVID, a lot of people made money very, very fast. And you can see with lottery winners, right? They make tons of money very quickly, but it's all gone in a few weeks.
Right.
The most important thing is be able to hold that consistency level and consistently hit these targets. A big problem I had in my first year of business, the first 2 years actually, was that our income was very inconsistent. We'd have great months. We'd have months where we're making crazy amount of money. And then the next month we make $0. And then the month after that, $0. And the month after that, $0. And we're out of money again. And I'm like, oh God, what do I do?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, now that we're out of money, I got to try even harder. Your back's against the wall. So you do it 10 times as much effort. And then you make a lot of money. And then the same cycle happens.
Right.
And a big thing is that I've happy to say I'm away from that. I don't behave in a sense like that. We are very consistent now.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a very, very tough thing to do. And I think that's probably the hardest thing in my career is stabilizing that income, making sure that you have consistent payments and consistent kind of running a business. Because you can't run a business on up and downs like that. It becomes very seasonal. And there's not a single Fortune 500 company that's seasonal.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah, no, that for sure. So, what kind of people do you work with, or how do you figure out, who's going to be your ideal customer?
Absolutely. So there's kind of two main things, right? At Marlin Strafe, where you kind of see the logo somewhere
Mm-hmm.
down there.
Yep.
We primarily are in biotech and pharma. So we do management consulting and recruiting.
Okay.
The big we used to really work with big employers, like a couple of my client lists is Google, Sanofi, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, things like that. But we slowly kind of came down to small business actually recently because I think we have more impact on small businesses. These big pharma companies, there's a lot of different vendors, there's a lot of moving parts, and you feel like a cog in the machine. These small to medium sized businesses, especially startup companies,
Mm-hmm.
I think I can make the most impact with because I can go in and I can recommend changes and I can really give them a non-biased approach, and they're willing to listen. Some of these bigger companies, they don't want to really listen as much, especially they know how old I am. They're
Yeah,
like,
then
yeah,
like, who
we're
are
not
you?
not
Yeah,
listening to
exactly. Yeah,
you.
right, right.
But at Buckhead.Ventures, what we do is that we focus on pre-seed, seed, and Series A companies in Atlanta. A big thing is we focus on the management team, right? We look for who is really, really talented, whose management is passionate about what they do. So we go in, we kind of give them some consulting advice. We might buy in a little bit to their company, buy some equity as well. But the most important thing is that we look for founders, right? We put money on founders and not ideas. I think there's a lot of great ideas out there, but it requires a really talented person to make it actually profitable and make it very special.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, it's another thing about entrepreneurship, right? It's like it's very tough. It's a tough market out there. You're a fish swimming in like a shark tank
Yeah,
practically.
right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's tough. It's painful. But once again, it's a marathon thing, right? If you can survive, right, you will become the shark in due
right.
time.
Yeah. And then again, it takes time to be able to get there and do that, right? So there's being an entrepreneur is definitely not an easy thing, yet it's definitely doable. How can people connect with you or contact you if they want to learn more about the stuff you're doing, and maybe they want to work with you?
Absolutely. So my Instagram is AtlAzaan, like Atlanta, ATL. My LinkedIn is just Azaan Subhani, like my name. Check out Buckhead.Ventures. And then you can also check out marlinstrafe.com. Feel free to connect me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with new people. Just shoot me a message and happy to talk.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And Asan, do you have any kind of habits, daily habits that you do? Tony Robbins refers to them as rituals, but do you have any habits that you must do every day to kind of put you in this positive state of mind and moving forward?
Absolutely. So everyone thinks it's crazy, right? I love music. I love music so much. I have the current where I'm in right now. This used to be my old studio. I built the studio when I was about 16, and it was, I'm sure you can see the stuff in the back there a
Yep,
little bit.
yep.
So what I like to do is, I wake up in the morning and I blast music as loud as I can. And I'm sure it's the most annoying thing in the world, but it gets me pumped up for the morning, right? I love
Yeah.
techno music. I love rap music. I love country music. And it
Okay.
gets me going, right? I love to work out a little bit. And I think something that other people think is crazy is I track everything.
Mm.
Hours, what I'm doing throughout the day, and mindfulness, right? I write in a diary practically. I have this app on my computer called Rise, and it pretty much tracks everything I do, and it gives me scores based on focus.
Mm.
Um, Very OCD-ish in a sense, very, it
Yeah.
can get to your head, but if you can manage it properly and you can kind of see a big picture overview about your day and data analyzation of that, put in these factors that make you happy, like music, maybe working out, and then you become like a robot of business. You become not just a human anymore, but like I was saying, you put you're on a play, right? You put the businessman mask and shirt on, and now
Mhm.
you're no longer Azaan, you're the CEO of Marlin Strafe. And then you become a
Mhm.
whole nother human.
Yeah.
It's like how Batman is. I
Yeah.
gotta compare myself to Batman, but like
No,
at
but
nighttime, he's Batman. He turns into Batman, but back in the day, he's Bruce Wayne. So it's a
right.
whole work life balancing again, right? You can be someone in the day and someone in the night. It doesn't have to be
Wow.
the same person.
Yeah.
But you got to make sure you're putting in that 100% effort when you put that bat costume on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, I love that. No, that's actually pretty powerful, and you're right. I mean, being able to start switching back and forth and being able to identify that, I think is crucial because yeah, even I can see how just being a full-time entrepreneur, you can get lost in that, and sometimes you're not performing or you're procrastinating or there's different things that might come about just because again, it's not an easy life. I do believe that it's a little bit challenging in a good way, and so you got to be able to be ready to take on all of that and the ups and downs and all that stuff. So that's actually a good way to do that. I love that.
Thank
Um,
you, thank you.
so in terms of you've given us a lot of great advice. I want to see if I can get a couple more from you for the people that are watching us and listening to us. If they're going through any challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what would be an advice that you can give us so they can start overcoming that challenge?
Absolutely. So the first thing is always, this is one thing I've done, right? I consistently have imposter syndrome. I wake up in the morning thinking I'm not good enough.
Okay.
It's very important to take a step back and look at yourself from a third person perspective and say, what have I done? Right? What did I do today? What did I do last week? What did I do this month? And you got to remember, not everything needs to be positive. When you're trading, think about your trading stocks. Not every month you make money. Sometimes you lose money. But as long as you're moving towards a progressive goal, even one step a day, you're beating everyone else who's not doing that. And it's kind of a bad, some people might not want to agree in that kind of mentality they have, that it's a race and you're kind of competing against other people. But you got to remember, right? It's like if you're working on yourself or you're working on something better, you're beating out 95% of people who are not.
Mhm.
So don't forget that, right? Don't forget that. It's very, very easy to forget that. And another thing here is that there's no such thing as a self-made man. You have a network, you have friends, you have family. Use them. Let people be your strength. Let
Mhm.
them be your kind of motivation also, right? I'm sure you have some loved ones too. How happy you think they would be if you just got up and did that one thing that they wanted you to do? But imagine if you did 10 things, imagine you did 100 things.
Right.
Let people be your support network and your strength. Don't be afraid to go to people and ask them for help and ask them for advice.
Yeah.
Because I know if my friends give me a call right now, I'd be happy to help them wherever I can. And I'm
Yeah.
sure your friends would too.
Yeah.
Hopefully your friends would too, in a
Yeah.
sense. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, once again,
Yeah.
it's every person's on their own journey, and it's very, very hard to replicate each instance to another person. But the most
Yeah.
important thing is, don't give up, right? If it's tough, that means something's working. That means
Right. And
you're
and
pushing
that's
more.
actually kind of cool. One things that I came to realization is that sometimes people might have this ego. You're talking about asking for help and just, it might be just ask for help. Just, you never know, right? I said people might have that ego or they might feel like, yeah, if I ask, it might be a sign of being vulnerable or something to that extent, right? And so therefore they don't want to ask. And on the contrary, they should, because again, you just never know, and it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of of strength, because you have the strength to ask and better yourself, right? So I would always encourage that, to always reach out for someone and ask for advice and or help, because I think that's one thing that might be missing, especially when people are going through some sort of challenge, right? And that's also the way you ask about it, and what is the expected outcome that you're looking to get, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And the big thing is, if you can, it's very hard, but if you can slowly make steps at doing that, about kind of taking a third person perspective on everything, you can really change the way your mind works. If you can just take that kind of inner out of you. And I think a very easy to do that is mindfulness, right? Take time and just think, just, practice a mindfulness course. Think about what's going on in your own head. If you can control your emotions and what you're thinking about, you can do anything realistically. And like, this is like a hidden secret I feel like people don't know about.
Mm.
Well, it's not really hidden. I feel like everyone's heard about it, but nobody really tries it because it sounds pretty crazy. But
Right.
if you can really, really control your emotions, control what you're thinking and how you behave, it'll change your life. Seriously.
Yeah. Boom, there you have it, man. I love that. Definitely that's definitely a golden nugget for sure. And again, you said it, we all know we have it, we just not using it. And so definitely that's huge. So Azaan, I want to say thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate this conversation. Anything else you want to say before I let you go?
I say, I truly love what I do. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me. This has been an awesome discussion. Once again, probably the biggest motivator is that the impact you make on the world around you. And I think that's my consistent motivator is I look around and I can see what I've done. I can see where I've helped. I can see what I'm gonna do also. And if you can think like that, I'm sure you can achieve anything. So yeah,
Yeah, and,
thank
and,
you
and
so much for your time.
yeah, no, definitely. I really appreciate that. And definitely, I do agree with you. And that impact is huge because then you have besides taking care of yourself, you have the idea of how else can I impact the world? And when I leave, what can I leave behind? Right. So definitely appreciate that. And appreciate you being here. And so thank you for that. For the rest of you guys, do me a favor, make sure that you go ahead and connect with Azaan at his social media. We'll have all those links here on the comments. And do me a favor, share this message because definitely somebody needs to hear this message. And I'll see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Thank you.
Hi, I'm CesarRespino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046. Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.CesarRespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.